Hey guys, welcome to the Political Matrix News, guys. We got Tim, Scott, Mike. We got the whole team here. How are y'all doing tonight?
Very good.
It's another day in paradise.
It is. It is a wonderful kind of paradise, and I think the biggest paradise here is that we haven't had any shootings this week.
It's only Wednesday.
Yay! Well, okay.
We haven't had
That's
any
right. We're
shootings.
recording this on February 4th on Wednesday. That's correct.
We haven't had any shootings that they felt like they could co-opt into a fundraiser.
Oh, that's right. Yeah,
Yeah.
there are shootings in America, and they're not holding anybody else accountable except for ICE, who killed 13 people now in I guess 8 months, maybe a year, which is a far fewer than any hospital or malpractice.
It's far fewer than died under Obama's immigrant program.
I mean, just think about all the other ways that people die every single day from heart disease and car accidents and over medication and malpractice and blah 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 blah.
But none of that is related. None of that's
Yeah,
related.
right. It's
Yeah,
just
you're not gonna
the
fundraise off
relation
that,
is that
Greg.
there's an ending of life.
Yeah, I said you're not going to fundraise off that. Those are not homicides. Of course, the Minnesota deaths were homicides, and of
You're
course,
not
when
homicides either.
No.
Oh, whatever.
no, they were homicides, and that's what I was just about to say. Is that the definition of homicide simply means death at the hands of a human. It doesn't mean it was an unlawful death. And in both cases, they were perfectly lawful. And while unfortunate, it was their own damn fault. When you commit the felony of impeding federal law enforcement in the operation of their official duties, and then you violently resist arrest, what do you expect, especially when you're using, in Renee Good's case, a deadly weapon, her vehicle? Now, I don't believe for a minute she meant to strike Officer Ross, but she did. And then in the case of Alex Preddy, well, he had his gun with him, and that, is perfectly lawful to do under normal circumstances if you have a permit. But in his case, he didn't have his permit on him, nor did he have another form of government-issued identification. Therefore, his carrying at that moment was not legal under Minnesota law. He was committing a crime. Now, he wasn't shot because he was carrying. He was shot because he was committing 2 felonies, one of which was violently resisting arrest. And when somebody noticed the gun, and it's still unclear exactly what happened there, but when they noticed the gun and one shouted gun, at that point, the police start shooting. And it is well settled law that the individual police officers need not ascertain on their own whether deadly force is justified. If gun is shouted by one, then all may rely on that to use deadly force. That is settled law. So while the deaths were unfortunate, they were their own damn faults.
I couldn't agree more. And just to pile on that a little bit more, the fact is that Preddy knew that he was probably going to be in a confrontation with the police that may or may not have been technically legal. All right. When you carry a firearm and you commit another crime, that is a crime all by itself. And interfering, even a misdemeanor, interfering with the police, while the level of, if they were to charge that as a misdemeanor, they'd also have to charge him with the gun crime too, because carrying a gun while you're committing a crime is in itself a crime.
I would say that crime or no crime, legal or no legal, if you just look at the natural law of things here, it is the same as striking matches with a can of gasoline. You're putting yourself in a situation where bad things can happen. Again, legal or illegal is immaterial to me, but if you put yourself in this situation for things like this to happen, I think it's really just Darwin at work.
We can debate the legality of Russian roulette, but you can't debate that it's ill-advised. And
Correct.
That's exactly what Preddy did.
Correct.
Yeah, I mean, and the whole situation, I think, is the biggest part is the hypocrisy of the left saying that they're upset about political violence when they are the authors of political violence through the Black Lives Matter and through the assassination attempts and through, I don't think anybody remembers the entire time when they were told by Pelosi and to go ahead and follow these people and get in their face and chase them at dinners. Maxine Waters, that's the other one I was trying to think of, to get in their face and to chase them at dinners and to confront them and to be, to be authoritatively aggressive toward them in public. I mean, they are the authors of this.
Yeah, frankly, I think it's weird that nobody's buying this stuff anymore. It's all complete theater. Everybody knows it's baloney. So at this point, these folks really have to basically lie to themselves in order to really even act as if it's real. And you ever notice how everybody that they're trying to defend, none of those people ever show up to these riots? You ever see the
Exactly.
pedophiles show up or the criminals show up or all the
No,
illegals swarming into the street
no.
trying to defend themselves? It's
It's
all,
interesting. White people.
yeah, of course.
I
I agree.
mean, the people who are being killed are the white people.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
Well,
it's
understand,
just,
Greg, this is
it-
all part of a Marxist revolution. And these leftist malcontents who get into these violent confrontations with the police, that's all they're trying to do is stir up social unrest. And it is for the purpose of ushering in a socialist utopia. But in order to, with them in charge, of course. But before you can usher in that socialist utopia, you have to destroy the United States as a free constitutional republic. And these violent tactics are straight out of the brown shirt playbook. They're straight out of the Communist Manifesto and Rules for Radicals,
Right.
Saul Alinsky's book. So these are tactics that any informed citizen should know. But boy, you try explaining that to
Yeah.
these uninformed leftists, and you might as well be speaking Greek. They don't have a clue what you're talking about.
Right.
Well, even if they had a clue, they wouldn't care because it doesn't support their narrative. And before we get too far away from that Maxine Waters thing, I want to remind everyone that that quote was televised in response to to protesters going into a restaurant where Huckabee,
Yeah.
Sarah Huckabee was eating dinner, and she was forced to leave the place. And Maxine Waters' response was that was appropriate.
Yeah. I mean, they get off on this. They raise money off of this. They are taking all their joy and pride off intimidation and killing and assaulting anybody who is against their system. And I don't think the Republicans are doing that. The Republicans are not going out there and killing them for wanting to grow government or to push their gay agenda or their pro-choice agenda or stuff like that. We just have conversations with them. We have narratives with them. We don't threaten them with guns or violence.
yeah, I think it's been pretty good on the conservative, if you want to call it, side of the aisle that for the most part, you don't really see people stooping down to this level because, they're just going to drag you down and beat you by experience is the cliche, right? So, but for a good number of conservative people, I shudder to think how many want others to do something about it. I hear a lot of people, well, why are they doing it? Why don't the Republicans respond, or why don't the conservatives respond, or any of that
Yeah,
stuff?
we're not them.
And we're not them. We are not them 100%. And I think that's one of the bigger differences. But Mike's absolutely correct. It's just part of the Marxist strategy to
Yeah.
undermine all of the pillars of American society. I think that's why you see attacks on the church, attacks on
Exactly.
financial systems, the education system, attacks on family, attacks on gender. It all gets rid of, if you look at it, it all gets rid of the middle class. Because
Exactly.
under socialism, you have the upper class and you have the lower class, or the haves and have-nots. There is no middle at all. So in the end, this is really kind of the goal.
Right. I also think it's ironic that they keep pointing back to the January 6th people, and they keep pointing back to the whole January 6th rally when everybody was having guns and stuff like that. But I don't think they really are pointing out to the fact that the result of them having guns was non-existent. There was no shootings at the January 6th rally on behalf of the protesters. There were shootings on behalf of BLM rallies. There were shootings on behalf of Antifa. There were shootings on behalf of what's going on here with all the different protests throughout all the college campuses against Gaza or against the Jews and everything else. They have used violence in the past. They have used violence regularly. And the difference is that whenever the conservatives are brandishing guns or AR-15s or whatever they want to at a rally, they don't use them. They're just
those two
holding them
particular
or wearing them, and it might be intimidation or scaring them or something, but they're not using those armory or ammunition or nothing like that. And all that is being used by the left.
Yeah, so Greg, there were two particular things that people on the left have tried to say that the Republicans were guilty of the same thing. And the two issues that they point to were Ashley Babbitt and the Michigan Legislative House protest, where a bunch of conservatives showed up with firearms. So let me address that one first, because that's the easiest one. There's nothing illegal about that. It was perfectly legal to carry firearms
No,
into the legislature in Michigan. Okay, so perfectly legal. So let's get to Ashley Babbitt. They're trying to say, oh, all you conservatives crying and complaining about Ashley Babbitt. Well, this is no different. Well, actually, it's entirely different because one,
it's
Ashley
very
Babbitt
different.
posed no danger to the Capitol police officer that shot her. And two, while I don't like it, that Capitol police officer was exonerated. It was found that it was appropriate to shoot her, even though it really wasn't. You look at it neutrally. He's lucky he didn't hit his own partner on the other side of her. Okay, it was a very bad shoot for lots of reasons, but politically you couldn't have that, so clear him. So all these people that want to point to Ashley Babbitt, the immediately retort that we should be saying, those of us interested in the truth, is, hey, that police officer was exonerated. So what you're saying is these ICE agents and Border Patrol, in the case of Freddie, should be exonerated? Is that what you're saying? They won't even know that happened because they are uninformed lemmings. If they
Exactly.
had
They
any
don't care.
knowledge, they wouldn't be leftists. They're leftists because they're ignorant fools. Or as Vladimir
It's
Lenin
never
referred to
about
them,
the issue.
useful idiots.
Yeah, it's never about the issue. It's always about the revolution. Logic, common sense, facts, be damned.
Be out the window, baby. Throw it out the window.
Well, this, and they actually, and I don't know who co-opted whose idea, but the CIA is so foundationally on this methodology that they have coffee cups printed that say, admit nothing, deny everything, make counter accusations. All right. If that doesn't
Yeah, my
sound
dad
like
had that cup.
like an interview with a leftist, I don't know what is.
Yeah, and actually, if you look
Exactly.
at
I
the
mean,
playbook of these various color revolutions that the CIA has successfully launched and in some cases unsuccessfully attempted in other countries, the playbook's basically exactly what is being pulled here. Now, I'm not saying that the CIA is doing this, but I'm saying the tactics are identical. And I wouldn't be
they
surprised
are,
if there
yeah.
were elements of the domestic intelligence agencies involved.
No.
Well, there
Like,
are
no.
elements of the Minnesota state government involved, so
Yeah, they
I
are.
think that what you're suggesting is not beyond the reason.
Well, I don't think
And
the
you know what we're
Minnesota
not
state
talking
government
about
is a
now?
government at all.
Yeah, well, what we're not talking about right now is the $9 billion in welfare fraud going on with the Somali refugees in Minnesota.
Yeah,
So, if
exactly.
nothing else, it took that story off the front page.
Yeah, I mean, which goes to my point that the entire Minnesota government apparatus is so corrupt, it's almost not even a real government. I mean, it's nothing but a
Banana Republic.
banana republic, exactly. It's nothing but a huge mafia scheme. And it's money laundering 101.
Quality Laundering Center is what actually that place was called. Not Leering Laundry. But, if you
Exactly.
look at Minnesota, AG there, the state AG is Keith Ellison. He's a very well-known established leftist in the hip pocket of the Obama administration. All
Yeah.
that stuff flows from him. He was in Congress. What's the area that he used to represent? The same one that Elon Omar is representing now. And,
Right.
it was funny. My wife had a college friend of hers who was an FBI agent. He spent 2 years in a car outside a mosque in Minneapolis as his first assignment. Just observing.
Wow. A friend of mine was asking how come Pam Bondi is being so active in Minnesota. I'm like, because the current AG is not. I mean, the only reason the federal AG has to come in is whenever the state people are not doing their job.
Well, he's not
And they
going
are
to. I mean,
not.
he's
And they're
condoning.
not doing exactly.
He's condoning everything. Why do you think that Chauvin got, the kind of trial that he got? It's because it was directed by, the AG's office there in Minnesota. That's exactly why none of these people got prosecuted, because they want this stuff to continue. Going back to Mike's point
Exactly.
originally, this is all part of the strategy. You don't take the best players out of the game. You keep them in the game and you keep them playing.
Yep. It is so sad. What's I think interesting, I was talking to Scott earlier about the Supreme Court and their decision on the California map, the congressional map. And so, what's y'all's take on that?
You'd have to tell me exactly what's going
Yeah,
on there. I'm sure they're trying to
go ahead,
redraw it to
Scott.
get more Democrats, but
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
the Republican governors are doing the same thing. So I don't know. I think it's probably going to be a wash in the end, maybe. This is part of the reason why we have the Electoral College, right? Because you can get population
Yes.
centers and, it's not going to really impact the overall. But it's more political theater, it's more headlines, it's more things to write on your fundraising letters and all that stuff. And Unfortunately, the criminals are not going to police themselves.
Yeah. So
That's what I'm
Tim,
worried
you're
about with
right.
California. I think California is going to cheat at such a high level. I don't know if the Republicans are going to be able to do it correctly at the same level.
Well, here's the
Well,
situation, and Tim, you're
it
right
doesn't
that
matter.
they're
They're
trying.
still going to get the same congressional. I mean, they're still going to get the same number of delegates, unless they're going to pack the census, I suppose.
Yeah, so
I
Tim,
don't
you're
really.
correct in terms of the Electoral College, because the Electoral College, the number of electors is, of course, number of representatives plus 2 senators. There you go. But it is going to have an effect on the midterm elections, and that was the goal here. And specifically, when we look at California, California has got 52 representatives. Presently, 43 of them are Democrats, 8 are Republicans, and there's 1 vacant seat. That vacant seat is Northeast California and is typically a Republican seat. It's part of the sane part of the state. So California did this redistricting thing through Prop 50, where they had this independent commission that does it. But Prop 50, which passed overwhelmingly last year, is going to allow the legislature to change those
Independent.
maps. Well, yeah, I mean, even independent, we know is an independent, but it's more independent than the legislature. Okay, but what they're trying to do right now in
Sure.
California, and I would say will do, especially in light of the Supreme Court giving them the green light. And let me clarify what that means. They didn't give them the green light, they just refused to hear the case. So effectively, it gave them the green light, but they didn't approve what they did. They just didn't stop it. But California believes that by redrawing those maps, they're going to be able to switch 5 seats from Republican to Democrat. Well, there's only 8 existing and 9 really Republican seats. If 5 switch, that means you'll have 4 Republicans in the entire state of California. Now, Texas's maps got approved. Well, Texas has 40 representatives in Congress. 25 of them are Republicans, but Texas expects to pick up 5 Republican seats. So that would be a direct offset, no harm, no foul. But then you look at Virginia with 11 representatives, 6 of which are Democrat, 5 of which are Republican. Virginia is about to switch, and they're expecting to switch 4 of them to Democrats. So now the Republicans are -4. But then you look at Florida. Florida's going to have a special session in April that is hoping to switch. I think they're hoping that 5 will switch. Right now, there's 20 Republicans and 8 Democrats, and depending on how they redraw the maps, they're expecting 5 to switch. But here's the problem Florida's going to have. And I will promise, Scott, I'll be quiet because I know you have something you want to say on this. But here's Florida's problem. In 2010, the voters, very foolishly, in my opinion, passed Amendments 5 and 6 to the state constitution that do not allow, they specifically outlaw constitutionally drawing legislative districts, that was Prop 5, and congressional districts, Prop 6, along party lines. And so if Florida is going to come in and redraw the maps in April, and they've already said their purpose is to politicize this and pick up Republican seats, ain't no way that is going to survive a Florida Supreme Court ruling, even though all but 1 of the Supreme Court justices are DeSantis appointees. It is such a blatant violation of the Constitution of Florida. I can't imagine how the state's going to get away with it. And that's assuming they even succeed in the legislature, which is not a given.
You think they may just try to delay until after the midterms and get those seats, sworn in and then fight the battle later on?
Yeah, there's no point in delaying because what's happening in Texas is going to happen for the 26 midterms. I mean, we're 10 months away from that.
So the Florida's not affecting the 26 midterms.
Well, they're hoping to. The session that Florida's having in April, they're intending that these new maps will be drawn in time for the midterms in order to offset what is happening elsewhere. Virginia specifically, since Texas and California are going to more or less offset. But other states are looking at it too. Now, Indiana, even though it's Republican controlled, they refuse. They're like, yeah, we're not doing that. So you do have Republican legislatures still refusing. But yeah, this is all about the midterm. Because right now, what do we have? A 5, 6, I think, margin between the two. Typically, the party that holds the White House loses 20 to 25 seats. And that's typically, if things are bad, and if the election was held today, I would describe things as bad, even though they're probably really not. They're perceived as bad. But the Republicans are likely going to lose a couple dozen seats anyway. If the election goes to the Democrats, meaning the House gets taken by the Democrats, Donald Trump will absolutely 100% be impeached again. Won't be removed from office, but he'll still be impeached. He'll still be distracted. And the legislative machinations will grind to a screeching halt because the Democrats will be in a position to obstruct. And that is all they know how to do during a Trump administration.
Well, I'm glad we got you here, Mike, because you got all the particulars for us. So thank you. I appreciate it.
So, Scott, I know you want to weigh
Scott,
in
you got
on that.
anything?
Well, I mean, kind of as you said. I mean, most of this is theater. For everyone that we gain, there's a Democrat that's going to step up too, and and I mean, can Florida work around it? Yeah, they probably can, because at the end of the day, all they got to do, regardless of what they may have said publicly. And while that would be taken into account, all they got to do is come up with, a legal reason to do it, and it doesn't matter that there's also an illegal reason to do it.
Well, sort of. That's only sort of partially true, Scott. And I'm going to use Texas and California as my examples. In the state of Texas, they absolutely used race as one of the demographics that they use in creating these new districts. However, the Supreme Court said, well, they may have used race, but they did it for partisan purposes. This was for partisan gain, not racial dilution. And so it was allowed to stand. But in California, the California people that made those maps, those idiots actually announced their intention, saying this will increase Latino representation in Congress. They were proud of that racial division of it. And so I don't see how the Supreme Court did say we're not hearing it, given that California very clearly said, oh, yeah, this is all racial, and we're giving more votes to Latinos. The Supreme Court didn't seem to care. So, yes, you're right. You can position it however you want. And if you can argue that legally you've done it okay, that's fine. But if you have loose lips that give the backdoor conversation who are admitting this is a racial thing, well, that's not allowed. And in the state of Florida, neither's the political gerrymandering either. And so that's why I'm really concerned about Florida having this special session in April. I will be not super surprised if it passes these new maps, but I will be super surprised if they remain intact at the November midterms.
Mike, it's so easy to statistically go in there and say that the too many of the counties have had too much of a population shift for us to wait until reapportionment, and mostly because of the number of New Yorkers and other people that have been driven out of their state and into our state. So now we need to reapportion how the representation is done. I mean,
And if that happens, Scott, you're right. That's a very strong argument, and I hope they listen to your reason. Because if they're running their mouths about how this is going to be a political gain for Donald Trump or for the Republican Party, those words will absolutely be used against them in court, and the maps will be tossed by the Florida Supreme Court.
No, they'll be used in court regardless of what they say. And that fact will be pointed out as part of their case too, that it doesn't matter what the truth is. They were always going to make this argument regardless.
Yeah, but there's a big difference between making the argument and quoting the people who drew the maps. What I'm saying is the people that are drawing the maps need to keep their mouths shut. Well, sure there is. I can say all day long that Scott Miller said XYZ, but if I have him on video saying that, there's proof. That's all I'm saying is do what you want, but keep your mouth shut.
It's all gonna come down to the filing, and the filing is going to show all the statistical data, and that's all it's going to take. And like I said, just because something benefits me, and because that's been the argument forever. They've said the same thing about all the racial gerrymandering. That while the politicians do say that in California, this ain't the first time California used that, crowed about all of that. They've been doing that every time they've done any sort of reapportionment.
Correct, but it's only been recent Supreme Court decisions that have said you can't do that because of the Federal Voting Rights Act that specifically allowed race to be used as one of the criteria for drawing maps. It no longer does. So the rules have changed. The Supreme Court has changed their interpretation of what is allowed under the Voting Rights Act.
They do what they want to do.
Hey, I got another question on.
I think the fact that we'll see which way the courts are leaning when we start seeing these. Frankly, I think we've already seen which way the courts lean. So say let California do it, they're going to be hard pressed to stand in the way of anyone else.
Yeah, but the difference between California and Florida is that Florida has a constitutional prohibition against it. California does not.
I'm telling you, it doesn't matter. I'm telling you, it doesn't matter. But they will come up with a legal justification to do exactly what they want to do. And Florida's Supreme Court will go along with it.
Well, perhaps we'll see. I disagree, but hey, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting the next 5 or 6 months.
Yeah, as much as they try to tell you that these guys don't watch the news, these guys watch the news. Frankly, they'll justify it in their head that they're doing it just to balance what's going on in California, because that makes
Yeah, I
it a
don't see
push.
that being.
And at the end of the day, that's why I'm not going to get excited about any of it, because at the end of the day, miracle of miracles, it's going to wind up being a push.
You are way more
So I got a
optimistic than me.
question. I got a question for you. So going back, let's say the House is taken over by the Democrats. What is y'all's feeling about executive orders from the president? And do you think that they would play more into the second half of his administration if he is continually under fire from a Democrat-led majority in the House?
Well, most people
Yeah.
who use executive orders as a pejorative are using it against people or for people, targeting people that have no idea what an executive order even is. Executive orders have been used by every president since George Washington. They are 100% constitutional if the subject matter is constitutional. So if the executive has the authority to act independently, then yes, without question, an executive order is proper. If it is bypassing, though, the legislative process or the constitutional restrictions of the executive branch, then they're not. So you can't, and I don't mean you specifically, Tim, I just you generally, you can't say whether executive orders are good or bad, because without knowing the subject of the executive order, well, the answer is going to be different. So they can be good, they can be horrible. And I will tell you, every president, well, in modern times, every president has done good ones and has done bad ones. But it depends on the specific.
Yeah, I personally don't like the look of executive orders because they always seem to come off, at least to me, as a workaround of some sort because you couldn't do something otherwise. And I think that probably was seeded more into my head from the whole Karl Rove era, when it seemed like George Bush seemed to just kind of light these things up like left and right. I kind of think that he's potentially going to stretch the limits of those executive orders if he can't get anything going in the House.
Well, I want to get to it.
There's an old cliche. There's an old cliche about the cops where they say you can beat the rap, but you can't beat the ride. That's kind of gonna be how the Trump is. The Trump executive order. Trump has already demonstrated that he has no reservations about issuing executive orders that are going to be challenged in the courts. He doesn't care about it. And from his perspective, you win some, you lose some, and we'll see where it all winds up. But the problem is from the time that he issues that order until the courts finally do something about it, he's achieved a lot between that time. So I think if we wind up losing control of the Congress, that's exactly going to be the case. That Trump is going to wind up just issuing executive orders and daring them to do something about it.
I agree. Yeah. I
Yeah,
agree.
so I'd like to
there's a big limit on. I mean, he can't control budgeting items or spending issues or anything with them, and I think he understands that part. But
Well,
I disagree.
That's not necessarily true, Greg, because Donald Trump has impounded billions of
again,
dollars.
the benefit of the
spending.
doubt.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think he has the authority to do that. So, Tim, there would be an example of, that's an abuse of the executive order, because if the Congress appropriates it, and there is such thing as impounding, that's true, but it's under extraordinarily rare circumstances. Now, it is something that is allowed under emergencies, right? But here's my problem with the emergencies, is that if Donald Trump were to say, we have an emergency on the border, so we're going to take this money from the Labor Department, say, and we're going to put it on the border and fight immigration. As someone who wants the border to be protected, hey, I'm cheering that on insofar as I like the policy. But here's the problem. Then you get a Democrat in charge who says, oh, yeah, we've got a problem with firearms in America. So now they take money out of the, Department of Interior, and all of a sudden they start going door to door collecting guns because that's the executive order, because we've got this emergency of guns. They can be abused. That's the problem with executive orders, that can be abused. And I'd like to give two examples real quickly.
Yeah.
One good, one bad. The first one's the good one, Donald Trump. Early on, in fact, it might have even been his very first day on his second term. Might have been January 20th of 2025. And that was his executive order to interpret Title IX. This is the gender equality in college athletics. to be biological sex, that when it says you can't discriminate based on sex, or that you have to create equal opportunity for female sports as you do male sports, is what Title IX says, he ordered that the federal government interpret that to mean biological men, biological women, the purpose of it being that, biological men couldn't, compete against women as they've been doing. Joe Biden put that into place through his executive order, telling the federal government to do that. So that's one that Donald Trump did that's really good. I want to tell you now one that's really bad. And interestingly, it was bad by his own admission. And that was Barack Obama. Now, technically, this was not an executive order. This was an executive action. But I think that semantics is the same damn thing. And that is that Barack Obama asked Congress to approve the DREAM Act. This is the children who came across the border illegally when they were very young with their parents. They came across the border, in some cases 15, 20 years prior. The dreamers, he called them. And he wanted them to be legalized. Legalize the dreamers. It wasn't their fault. They don't speak Spanish. The only country they've ever known is America. Let them stay. I, by the way, am in favor of that DREAM Act, okay? For a number of reasons. If you want to get into, we can. We don't have to, but I'm in favor of that. But Congress refused to pass it. So Barack Obama, through executive action, said, yeah, well, we're just going to do it. And he created DACA, the Deferred Action on Childhood Arrivals, where he allowed these dreamers to stay completely against the law. And only months prior to that executive action, he said, in response to a questioner in a Telemundo town hall, who said, how come you're not going to let the dreamers stay? He said, well, I don't have the constitutional authority to do that. Congress makes those laws. I have to enforce them. And then Congress didn't make the law. So Barack Obama said, to hell with it. And he did it anyway. So there's a bad one. So executive orders can be good. Executive orders can be bad. It all depends on what it is. The problem is that the news media sure as hell ain't going to go into that much detail. And the average American hadn't a clue what's going on. Our biggest problem is that the Americans are a bunch of dumbasses. And that's two words, by the way, dumb masses.
Wait a
As you
second.
can, as you like.
That's funny. Anyway, tell us how you really feel about that.
Hey, I always do. You know you're going to get the truth out of me. I don't hold back.
Yeah, I mean, and I agree. I mean, the executive order issue, but I do see where Tim's going and where y'all are both going. I mean, he's not going to get anything passed unless he becomes a liberal. And I mean,
I don't
with the
know.
Democratic Congress.
Depends what day you ask him, I think.
Well,
Yeah,
Trump,
maybe.
I mean, Trump has mastered that sales technique we called peeling them off the ceiling, where he'll get everyone all amped up over something that he doesn't care two things about,
Right.
and then compromise where he wanted to wind up all along.
You know, I read his book, The Art of the Deal, back in the 80s when it came out. And it was a long book, but I only remember one thing from it. And that was exactly what you described, Scott. And that was his negotiating technique. Is when you sit down to negotiate, always take an extremely absurd position that's way more than you really want. It'll throw your opponent off balance because they're not expecting something that ridiculous. And so they might start a little closer to where you wanted to be so that they don't seem so far apart. And then when you compromise, you still end up you're closer to what you wanted rather than what you were expecting to begin with. And so that is a technique that he openly admitted was his art of dealing. And that's exactly what he does.
And so does that really give a lot of credence to his statement a couple of days ago about nationalizing elections?
I think it is as an example of that, because he doesn't have the authority, and he knows he doesn't have the authority.
No,
He
see,
doesn't
I'm
have
going
the
to disagree with that, Scott. I'm going to disagree. You're right.
Well, let me finish my
All
point
right.
before you disagree
right.
with it. Okay.
All right. Go ahead. I'm sorry
Okay.
I interrupted.
He can't nationalize the elections. He does not have the authority to nationalize the elections. What he does have the authority to do, and what the federal government does have the authority to do, is establish the criteria. Like how these elections are conducted is one thing, but whether or not who is qualified to vote and how you prove that they are qualified to vote is something that can be mandated by the federal government. And frankly, that's a lot of the reason why we have the problems that we have, is because the federal government has not demanded that or frankly, up until now, we haven't had a need to demand that you have certain minimal criteria in order to prove that someone's eligible to vote. Well, now all of a sudden, the left has taken it so far that I think it is time for the federal government to establish criteria for what is required for federal elections. For state and city and county stuff, whatever they want to do, they can do what they want. The federal government doesn't have the authority to mandate that, but they do have the authority to mandate what is done for federal candidates. Which votes count for federal candidates?
How would that
All right,
work, I
so-
mean, if they're on the same ballot?
That's the problem of the states, because if they don't like it, they can have a separate federal election and a separate state election. But
Right.
none of them are going to do that because they can't afford to do it.
Yeah, so
true.
here's where I'm going to agree and disagree, okay? You just said that the federal government doesn't have the authority to do that, and Donald Trump knows it. You're correct. The federal government doesn't have the authority to do that. Donald Trump doesn't know that. Donald Trump is unaware of that constitutional fact, okay? I don't believe for 1 minute he has ever read the Constitution. He has no clue that what he said is inaccurate. The national government cannot nationalize elections. Now, what you just said, Scott, is correct, that the Congress does have the authority to prescribe the place and manner that elections are held, and that's true, and I wish they would. And I wish they would impart certain criteria, specifically being voter ID. But it's not true that they haven't done it, because they have done it. Under President Bill Clinton, we had the so-called Motor Voter Act, where when you got a driver's license, you were required by federal law to be offered a voter registration card. And the federal government created that voter registration card. And it did not have any citizenship proving requirement. Arizona, 15-ish years ago, passed a state law that required proof of citizenship to be able to vote. And it went all the way to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court threw out Arizona's law because the federal government's requirements didn't allow you to require proof of citizenship. So under federal law, it is illegal to require proof of citizenship for federal elections. You can do it in state local elections all day long, but federal is really where
That
we
needs
got
to be
the problem,
changed.
okay? Well, of course it needs to be changed, but it needs to be
That
changed by the
definitely needs to be
Congress.
changed,
And
yeah.
as long as we have the filibuster, a procedure I'm in favor of, by the way, but as long as, although it should be done differently, but as long as we have the filibuster, it's never going to change, because one party, which happens to be in the minority right now, benefits from no requirement of citizenship, because the Democrat Party is all about fraud. They're all about importing voters. And if citizenship proof was required,
No.
it's likely the Democrats would never hold a majority again in the United States Congress. So it's never going to, and by the way, it's never going to become law because of that. But the president wouldn't have the authority to require that because an act of Congress already prohibits it. And a controlling legal authority, that being the Supreme Court of the United States, has affirmed it. I don't like it.
I think there's
the fact.
plenty of evidence to suggest that he's never listened or read the Constitution because of how much he attacks the constitutionalists in Congress, particularly Thomas Massey, who I'm a huge fan of.
Yeah, Massey's great. I mean, he's
Yeah.
not flawless, but nobody but my wife is. So there we go.
What, is she watching
need
or
to-
something? You trying to score
Well, no,
points?
I was just going to say, I need to bookmark this exact point and make sure she gets a chance to see it. No, Massey's great. Ron Paul's great. I mean, they're not flawless. They have some times where I'm like, oh, come on, guys. But yeah, they're mostly good. But you're right. Donald Trump typically attacks both of them when they try to raise the constitutional restrictions that say, Mr. President, you can't do that. He just brushes them aside.
I've been told that he does not.
Yeah, I believe it. I
Really?
believe it. And I certainly, even if he does read, I guarantee he's never read the Constitution. Never. Not a chance.
100%.
You guys are being a little bit hating on him. I mean, come on. He's a president.
Hey,
He
I'm
should-
calling it like
I'm
I
sure he
see
read
it, Greg.
Well,
Well-
there's no way that he can be up on as many things as he's up on through verbal communication, because you can't ingest the data that fast.
Right.
Yeah, I'm not saying he doesn't read at all, Scott. I'm saying he's never read the Constitution.
Okay, well, that's
Well-
not what you said. You said he doesn't read.
No, I
Okay.
think he doesn't. Yeah, no,
Well,
I don't.
you know,
I don't think that he reads. I think he just listens to people talking to him all day. I think he just lets other people do it for him because it's beneath him to do some of these things. And don't get me wrong, I like some of the stuff that he's done, but he has personally made it very difficult for me at an increasing pace to really support some of the stuff that he's been doing lately, because it just kind of goes off the rails. Some of the unconstitutional stuff, all the stuff that is really just seemingly to me as very self-serving and to everybody else be damned. And I didn't elect him to do what he wanted. I elected him to do, or excuse me, I voted for him to do what we wanted, not what he wanted. And all of the prescriptions that we gave him January 20th last year, I mean, I don't, a lot of them have just fallen by the wayside.
Yeah,
Yeah,
welcome to
well,
politics.
yeah,
Well, he could
it's a mess.
he could have been, and he still could be, absolutely fantastic if he just takes the mandate that the people sent him to Washington to do and stop dealing with all of this extraneous stuff. But he just sometimes he just can't get out of his own way, in my opinion.
Oh yeah, I agree with it. Yeah, exactly. I mean,
Understood. That's
the entire left wing is a group that does all the goose stepping, and they're the ones that do all the demanding that it's this way or you're dead. I mean, and that's actually the way they're acting out with all these protests around the country. I mean, it seems like their entire election model is the whole protest method. They started out with the Black Lives Matter and the Antifa protests. And actually, it started with Occupy Wall Street way back in 2010 and everything, and 2009 that time frame. And it's nothing but a distraction game. It's nothing but distraction. They don't care about property. They don't care about lives. And basically, if you get it, don't fall in line exactly 100%, they're going to knock you out. Period. I mean, there's no recipe for going against them at all. So, and the conservatives and Republicans, we actually have an ability to disagree and to agree and get along without kicking each other out of the party. I mean, it's interesting. We're such a larger tent, a bigger tent party. The Democrats or the left will ever be. I mean, with the wokeism and everything else, where you had to be transgendered, loving, and you had to be pro-choice at eighth month and everything else, or else be damned. I mean, that's their entire concept on the left, and that whole very narrow-minded thinking, myopic thinking, is just going to end up sinking them in the end.
Just like every other liberal and Democrat policy, it's enforced through fear and intimidation. It's the
Exactly.
only way that they get anything done. They threaten their own people. There's an implied threat among their own people that you're going to support this stuff, or we will cast you out, just like we have all the other non-believers.
Yeah. And so we have
and
a
I am
president
not.
who's a little crazy. I mean, Trump says weird stuff. He's out there and he says things that are not normal. I mean, I think what Tim was saying, he was elected with certain criteria to change things and to make it very good. And he has done a lot of good things, and he's done a lot of things that might be self-serving. But at the same time, he is also mainly elected to shake up the apple cart because and to basically reshape the whole system. And that's something that has not been done because the whole status quo, doing everything the way it's been brokenly doing and brokenly working, is not the way it needs to keep going. And we need something to shake it up.
jumpsuits and chains.
No,
Jumpsuits and chains will shake up the apple cart, and I'm not convinced that Pam Bondi was put in that spot to do that at all. I think she has ultimately been put in that spot to control the narrative and really
she's a
orchestrate a
PR
lot of this
person.
stuff and just stall. Because when she was AG in Florida, she had all the evidence to put Epstein behind bars, and all of a sudden there is nothing. Come on, that's just
Well, who's the governor then?
what's that?
Who was the governor when she was the AG?
Oh gosh,
Rick
she just
Scott, right?
yeah, it was Rick Scott. Yeah, it
Yeah.
was.
And so, I mean, the whole thing is that Pam Bondi, we knew Pam Bondi for a long time, and she was good at AG, but she was also very good at the PR side of it, and basically managing the entire narrative of the Justice Department of Florida, and it ran very well at the FDLE and the law enforcement here in Florida. I mean, we don't have protests in Florida. We don't have uncontrollable random violence throughout Florida. I mean, we have a pretty good law enforcement system throughout Florida. I mean, the Florida Highway Patrol and the FDLE and other sheriff's departments, they bust their butts protecting and serving and defending the very rapidly growing state of Florida here. And that was all put in place whenever she was the AG, and then before her when Bill McCollum was the AG. I mean, and basically whenever McCollum was the AG before her, he is having to do the same thing. There's a lot of PR and everything, and that's been part of her job is not just to do the law enforcement, but to make sure the narrative is on point to where everybody's protected. And she's taken that to DC now, and it's much better that she's doing it instead of Matt Gaetz.
I think in Florida, I would probably chalk that more up to a little bit more of correlation, but not causation that she was benefiting from, because
Probably.
we had a pretty good we had a really good economy back then. We have a terrible one now, and crime is an inverse relationship with economy. So
It is.
I think that's a lot of what you're seeing now. You got so much money that's been pumped up into the money supply that the prices have gone up over because of inflation. People are hanging on by a thread. When they're backed into a corner and they're desperate, this is the kind of crap that we get.
All right, so I have a question
Yeah.
for the three of you just about Pam Bondi, and I'm not defending her, although I do generally really like her. I always have. But other than the Epstein files, because I think we could probably all agree that that one hasn't been handled well, but other than the Epstein files, what has she done wrong?
I don't know of anything.
To me, I think it's some of the stuff that she hasn't done at all. I mean, what happened to any of the FBI agents that held on to the Hunter laptop?
That's true.
What's
Well,
happened in
I think they're
Georgia
working
in the Fulton
through
County
that.
elections?
Well, they just raided
Pardon me?
Fulton County. They just raided Fulton County.
Yeah, it did. Yeah.
So the FBI raided Fulton County and
Yeah,
took
well,
away a whole bunch of their records. And so we don't know what they're going to find yet, but there seems to be an effort there. And so good for her on that. In terms of these leftist malcontents that are protesting in Minnesota and New York as well, she's taken action on that. I mean, Don Lemon got arrested. Now, I'm not sure that was a good arrest or not. If Don Lemon was only doing journalistic activities in that church, then what he did was perfectly lawful. The concern is,
Sorry,
that,
Mike. I think the FBI was listening and interrupting your communication. We couldn't hear you
yeah,
quite
well,
well.
wouldn't be surprised. All right, so I'm not sure where it cut me off, but I'll start over just saying specifically with Don Lemon. And that is that with Don Lemon, if all he did was cover that church invasion and interview the pastor, then what he did was a journalist and it wasn't a crime. And that's all I have seen him
Right.
do. Now, I'm not saying he hasn't done anything. If he helped organize it, or if he was chanting anti-ICE slogans, or if he did anything like that, then he absolutely, the journalism does not protect him, and he committed a crime, a violation of the FACE Act, and he should be absolutely prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law.
Exactly.
But if all he did was journalistic activities, then it was a bad arrest. But I give Bondi credit for attempting it, unless she knows that all he did was journalistic activities. And if he did more than that, if he was an agitator, then please present us with the evidence now and not just at trial. Because my concern is that if all he did was journalism and he gets arrested and then they dismiss the charges, or worse, goes all the way to trial and acquitted, it makes her look like a fool.
Initially, it seems like they're trying to hang their hat on the fact that he didn't leave and exactly when the pastor asked him to leave.
He was a
He's
journalist.
being charged
wrong,
with the
but I
Klan
get-
Act.
What's that,
Well,
Greg?
well,
He's being charged with the Klan Act. I mean, basically.
No, it wasn't the Klan Act. No, it's not. No, it's the FACE Act. It's the Freedom to Access to
FACE
Clinic
Act,
Entrances Act,
yeah.
which outlawed protests in front of abortion clinics. And the only way that the
Right.
Democrats got that passed under President Clinton, and aren't you glad I don't have to say which President Clinton? I mean, look, if you got nothing else good to say about Donald Trump, he kept the wildebeest out of the White House. I mean, that alone should make us all very grateful for him. But under Bill Clinton, the FACE Act, which made it illegal to block abortion clinics, in order to get enough support for it to pass the Congress, they had to add religious institutions to it as well. Nobody's ever been prosecuted
Right.
for violating the religious institutions. It's always been abortion clinic only. So this is going to be the first time that the federal government has gone after somebody for violating religious services. And it wasn't just Don Lemon. There were the two other organizers who were arrested first, and about a week later he was.
Exactly.
So they very clearly broke the law. They clearly broke the FACE Act, and I want to see the federal government go after them fully. No plea bargains, no anything. Whatever the maximum is that's allowed, they need to go after it. Compromise, zero. And if Don Lemon was part of that organization or that agitation or that protest, then he's a criminal. But if all he did was cover it as a journalist, even after being told to leave, I've covered things as a journalist, been told to leave, and I don't leave. I'm only there as a journalist. I'm not there chanting. I'm not there participating. I'm covering what's happening. That's what Don Lemon claims. Now, Don Lemon's a lying piece of crap, okay? So I don't know if what he's saying is true or not, but I am saying that's all I've seen him do. And if he was an agitator,
Well,
if he was a protester, I wish they would share that with us.
as we get into the Republicans running their 2-minute drill, as we get down into the midterms, I do feel hopeful that more and more of this stuff will actually come to pass, because they're going to need points on the board if they think they're going to get the Republicans out in August or November at this point.
Well, number one, in response to that, I think that the timing of all of this stuff, I think a lot of the reason we haven't seen any of this stuff is because they have been kind of holding it back so they could just start putting, I'm hoping that they could just start putting some wins on the board at the correct time so that they're not forgotten
100%.
when it's appropriate. I will say that while I believe for sure that the actual protesters are going to get tried and probably convicted because it's especially the guy that was yelling at those kids and recording himself yelling at those kids, that's pretty damn indefensible. And there are several others that are going to be in the same position. I also believe that Don Lemon is guilty of the same thing, but I also believe that he will be that he won't be found guilty of that because I mean they may or may not prosecute him, but even if they do, they're not going to convict him of that because even the jury, they're just not going to have enough jury support to do it. Now, again, like I said, he's guilty.
Yeah, he is.
But I just don't think they're going to do it.
I mean, I think it's ironic. He was out there whenever he had his own TV show on CNN bragging about arresting Trump. And I mean, they arrested a president. Okay, they can arrest a talk show host on YouTube. Okay.
Well, and he has been arrested.
I mean, that's my point. And all this here liberal hypocrisy. Once again, I mean, if it weren't for hypocrisy, liberals wouldn't even exist. And so, I mean, it's just pathetic on how they're like shocked that it's a violation of the First Amendment, a violation of free speech. They arrested a president, for God's sakes. I mean, for stuff that wasn't even real.
Listen, if the video clip doesn't fit, you must acquit.
Very good, Tim.
It does fit. And there is no acquitting.
That's my new bumper sticker right there.
There you go.
Oh, yeah.
Love
For
it.
$9.99. Well, you guys got anything else you want to talk about tonight?
Hey, I got a quick round robin question.
Sure.
Seattle by 10.
I'm boycotting it. I haven't. No, I couldn't care less, and I'm not going to watch it.
Bad Bunny, man. Bad Bunny.
No, let me well, I don't really care about him either, but I have been boycotting the NFL, not since Kaepernick took a knee, because when Kaepernick took a knee, it's like, okay, he's just a jackass. When other players took knees with him, I'm like, okay, fine, they're jackasses too. But the moment Roger Goodell came out and said, we support that protest, I said, okay, I'm done. This is now the league endorsing it. I'm done. And I haven't watched a minute of NFL since, and I won't. I couldn't care less. But moving on to the round robin question. Should, not will, but should the United States take military action against Iran for the purposes of supporting the protesters with the goal being to overthrow the regime? Yes or no?
I think we should have taken military action against Iran years ago for not even for their nuclear program, but for their persistent and obvious support of all of these proxies. They sit there and pay money to people to attack us and our allies. That ought to be all we needed right there, to just bomb every government building in Iran to rubble, is my opinion.
And you still maintain that? You hold that still?
I absolutely maintain that.
You're a yes.
Because if you let them up and they reconstitute themselves in any way, they're just going to go back to the same thing. Bomb them into submission now. Let the people do what they want to do. I'm not suggesting we install another government. I'm saying you bomb them into submission. Let the people over there constitute whatever government they want. But just make it clear that they know that if you behave the same way the previous regime happened, you'll suffer the same consequences.
What do you think, Tim?
Not until we have that debating on the floor of Congress, as we are constitutionally required to do. And if the question just, I'm against it in the framing of the question because of the protesters. It's not, to me, it's not our fight. They need to handle it on their own. But I know, Scott certainly has a point, but that's sort of a different issue. But just based on the framework that you laid out, no, but I want to have that debate in Congress.
Okay, so I know the question was forward-looking, but I am curious since you brought that up. What is your position on Operation Midnight Hammer when we did go in with the B-2 bomber and we bombed their nuclear program? Was that, not whether you supported it personally, but was that lawful or no, in your view?
I don't think so.
You don't think it was lawful, Greg? What do you think? Should we
I,
go
I
after
think
the Iranian
I think the
government?
Constitution only.
Well, let's kind of finish. Go ahead, Scott.
I think the Constitution only requires us to consult Congress before we go to war, and we've always been able to perform brief operations, and it's codified in the law. I mean, that particular the particular operation is exactly what the current use of force authorizes. So if they want to change it, they have the opportunity to change it now, but they got it to do, and until they do, you know, whatever president we have in office. And honestly, I would question whether or not the Congress has the authority to limit the president's ability to do that sort of brief action.
Hey, Greg, what do you think?
I weigh heavily the concept that he has that authority under the auspices of an immediate threat, very prominent immediate threat. Because I've certainly heard the arguments about, that was sort of put into the Constitution when it took a while to get to Congress and to convene on the floor to actually have those debates. I think there's some validity to that. I don't see Iran as any immediate threat. I don't see Cuba certainly as any kind of national threat. And boy, I had some debate about that online today. All of this stuff I think is self-serving for the military-industrial complex. I think we've got to prop up these places as imminent threats, as enemies, as like they're hovering over the red button, and we've got to do something right now before they push it. I think it's all trying to get us into a scare tactic, fear mode, so that they can take and pass more stuff that just controls us. But I know I'm probably kind of dark on that.
A little bit.
Greg,
A little
go
bit.
or no?
I think we should blow the hell out of them. But I mean, basically, I was a military guy. I was in the Air Force.
World's largest glass parking lot.
Exactly.
Mhm.
I mean, I was in the Air Force, and I do know all I have a lot of access to a lot of intel about Iran, and basically, as much as they might or might not be perceived as an imminent threat, they are an imminent threat. They are definitely the funders and the financiers of a lot of people who are just trying to do everything they can to destroy the American way of life. I don't really give a damn about the protesters or not, because I don't really care about setting their new country up for another new regime of new terrorism. I mean, that's not the reason why I would be doing it. I would be doing it. I actually think that we should, assist in, installing some sort of government here is actually going to support the freedoms of the Iranian people. Because right now, the entire totalitarianism that's being driven by the Ayatollah and basically his entire concept, it's not just people just think it's terrorism. It's not that. It's human trafficking. It's terrorism. They're big in the opium business and the heroin business and the drug business. I mean, there is a lot of bad stuff going through the whole Middle East here that they are controlling the narrative of. And they're also controlling a lot of the pocketbooks of Russia. They're controlling and influencing China. They're controlling and influencing North Korea. And basically, I mean, they're the head of the snake that needs to be cut off. And so, as far as Congress getting in the way, I ain't worried about. I mean, right now, if we have the Democrat Congress, I don't give a damn what they say at all, pro or con, about going after them, because it's going to be anti-Trump, and basically most of the Democrat Congress supports Iran. I mean, seriously. I mean, and if they end up taking over, I don't give a damn about Congress on that level. Trump should go in there and carpet bomb the hell out of them.
Well,
All
I don't
right,
think
so
they have
since
control
you
of
guys-
anything. They certainly go ahead, Mike.
No, go ahead, Scott. I'll let you. I'm going to wrap it up in a minute.
I said I don't think that they have control of anything. They have some influence and some participation in things, but I don't think they have control of anything. All they can do is sit there and cause trouble around the world, and that's what the problem is. Is that they do that in order to get their way, in order to get other countries off of something that they're worried about. They cause trouble. And we've just got to stop putting up with it. I don't know how we got ourselves into a position where we normalized allowing people to do this, but it's got to stop. It's just ridiculous, and there's nothing theoretical about it. We had every right to go in there because they were threatening. They were doing everything they could to be able to hold us as a nuclear hostage. And the problem is, if they ever demonstrate that they've got a nuclear bomb, we have no option but to go ahead and turn them into that glass parking lot.
Exactly.
Yeah, so Scott has articulated that very well, and I agree with everything that he said. We should have done it a long time ago. the godfather of Islamic terrorism, Jimmy Carter, should have put an end to it, and he just was too weak to do it. In fact, he's the reason the Ayatollah Khomeini even got back. He was warned, don't allow him out of Paris.
Exactly.
Remember, he was in exile in Paris, and he was warned, don't let him back into Iran. He'll be a terrorist. And Jimmy Carter, oh no, he's a
Right.
man of religion. He's a man of peace. And they let him go back, and look what happened. We should have taken out the Iranian theocracy a long time ago. And Greg, your point is a good one. If all we do is replace an Islamic theocracy with an Islamic theocracy, then sure, it's a complete waste of time. But if we can replace it with a secular government, we need to do it. And unfortunately, we should have done it a couple weeks ago when the protesters were on the streets, because somewhere between 2,000 and 36,000 of them are now dead. And this is after Donald Trump tweeted out, maybe it wasn't technically tweet, I think it was his, what do you call it, Truth Social platform. But either way,
Truth Social
sent the message out. Continue protesting. We've got your back. We're coming to help. What have we done? So far, not a damn thing. We've got to honor our word, and we need to help bring about the downfall of this theocracy. It should have been done 47 years ago. We should have done it every month since, and we have the best opportunity to do it now, or at least we did 2 weeks ago, when the protests were going on and the government was at its weakest point. If we can take out the head of the snake, and I'm talking just the government, not the nation, although that is the head of a whole other snake. But if we can take out the leadership of the Iranian government and the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, if we can take them out and allow the Iranian people to rise up and institute their own secular, pro-Western government, it's our only chance of Iran not pursuing nuclear weapons. And I believe that's the #1 threat to the entire globe, is nuclear weapons in the hands of the mad mullahs who rule Iran. So we absolutely should be doing it. We should have already done it. Plus, if we help topple the government, then we have a seat at the table when they reconstitute it as a secular government that will hopefully be pro-Western, pro-US. So, Scott, we should have done it every month since 47 years ago. The time to do it was 2 weeks ago. The second best time to do it is tonight.
I agree. Completely agree.
And as for
Not
Tim,
with you. I'm not with you.
yeah, and Tim, I respect your argument of only Congress can declare war.
Yeah.
I absolutely respect that. I know where you're coming from. The two things that I would say to that are, one, the current Congress, if we even ask them, even secretly, damn well they would tip off the Islamic regime. The same reason that Donald Trump didn't tell them about going to grab Maduro, because the Democrats would have tipped off Maduro that it was happening. Okay, so you can't trust anybody in Congress right now, especially on the Democrat side of the aisle. So you can't tell them and retain the element of surprise. The second thing is, while the Constitution does indeed say that only Congress can declare war, there also is the War Powers Act. And the War Powers Act has never been tested in court, and there's a lot of arguments it's not even constitutional, precisely because it does grant the president the authority to use military force more or less however he sees fit, as long as he lets Congress know within a month that he did it. So we've got the statutory authority to do it that may or may not be constitutional. So, Tim, I respect your constitutional position completely. I understand it. And in most cases, man, I'm quoting it right along with you. But in this case, I think that the facts on the ground justify unilateral action by the United States, by the executive, without even asking Congress. Now, I do want to make one thing real clear before I finish. Not one overt American boot on the ground. This can be done by air and covert forces. I do not want, 10,000, 20,000, 100,000 Americans on the ground in Iran. That is not necessary. We can do the air strikes and then allow the people on the ground to topple the government themselves. And one final point. I know I said that would be my final. I got one more to make about the head of the snake. You take out the Iranian government, it means you also are going to destroy Hezbollah. You're going to destroy Hamas. You're going to destroy the Houthis in Yemen. You are going to defund and defang Islamic terrorism around the world. And that, Donald Trump wants the Nobel Peace Prize. The irony, the paradox is the best way to a Nobel Peace Prize is to bomb the shit out of Iran.
And on that note,
I think we'll leave it on that note right there.
All right, y'all have a good night.
Actually, Mike, do you have another poem you want to leave us with? Roses are red, violets are blue, bomb the hell out of Iran, and we'll kill them too.
There you go. Okay, love it. Thanks, guys.
Y'all have a good night. All right, that's pretty cool.